Hey, what's going on YouTube? Gary here, gzduel, back with prophecies, and I'm here to tell you guys a lot of things I learned about this deck. And the things I've learned are looking very good for all of us who are not playing prophecy. So first of all, I want to tell you guys something about the deck and myself as a player. I'm sure you guys, more experienced prophecy players would know I'm making a lot of misplays during, like with my masters, searching out, the spell books I probably shouldn't search out and whatever. And please forgive me for my misplays. But at the same time, you know why I keep making these misplays? The reason why I keep making these misplays is because the deck is so powerful that it gives me too many options. And when you're faced with too many options, you don't necessarily know which is the most optimal play. So if you have the ability during the end phase to search out like 3 spellbooks and use whatever spellbook you want and have them back with the effective judgment, excuse me, you probably don't you probably don't think hard enough about like what is the best play, among your 6 options. So that's a thing about the deck and me as a player. So if you see a lot of misplays, please forgive me. It's me not being good, not being familiar with the deck, and it's also the deck itself having too many options. Like no matter how you play, you can play it well. Okay, so 3 things also I've learned about this deck regarding its weakness. The first weakness is the spellbook player may not necessarily always draw the broken cards. They may not always necessarily draw into Spellbook of Judgment or Spellbook of Secret or the Spellbook Magician. So if they don't open up with Judgment, then you do have a chance of winning it, provided that you are a good player and you know what you're up against. You know the type of things that they use. The main offensive strategy is, the main defensive strategy they have is of course Jowgen, and they protect the Jowgen at all costs. They protect it with Spellbook of Fate, and they protect it with the Spellbook of Wisdom. So that's also a weakness in itself. So that even if they open up broken like I do during in this way, even if they open up with both Spellbook of Wisdom and Spellbook of Fate, and they have Kaiku and they have Jowgen and all of that, the best way to get out of it is one card. This one card is on the field as well. You summon your own Kaiku. Your opponent has Jowgen first turn, sets Spellbook of Fate, Spellbook of Wisdom. You summon out Kaiku. Your opponent cannot activate the Spellbook of Fate because Spellbook of Fate has that activation requirement in which you have to banish Spellbook spell cards from your graveyard in order to activate their 3 effects, right? So if you summon out Kaiku, they can't pay the activation cost, they can't use Spellbook of Fate on the Kaiku. Now what your opponent has left is a Jowgen on the field with 1300 defense and a Spellbook of Wisdom. So what you're going to do is just go into battle phase and attack into the Jowgen. Problem solved. Jowgen is gone, Spellbook of Fate is locked down. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of using that in the side deck for my Madolches. So that I can keep that I can keep that Kaiku on the field. And then when it's my turn, I can go off into my own little strategies. And I would forever lock down the Spellbook of Fate, provided that I can keep the Kaiku alive. So how do I keep the Kaiku alive? The best way I can think of that will also help with the entire Madolche strategy is if I use Threatening Roars. So on top of siding in like 2 to 3 Kaiku, I was thinking about siding in also 2 to 3 Threatening Roars, so that I have a lot of stall cards. I have 3 Swift Scarecrows for when I don't have monsters, and I have 3 Threatening Roars for when I do have monsters. So of course it helps with the overall strategy of like that one turn blow up, kill all your opponent's monsters that they special summon, and I can protect the Kaiku. So that's my way, I think, of getting out of spellbooks. So some of you may be asking, why don't you, go with the conventional way? Go with Draw and Lockbird. Draw and Lockbird is good. Well, I've seen some prophecy players on YouTube. They say Draw and Lockbird is absolutely useless against prophecies if you're a good prophecy player. Game 1, your opponent doesn't know that you're playing prophecy, so you're going to go off. They're not going to main Draw and Lockbirds most likely. So you'll probably win game 1. Game 2, your opponent's like, alright, cool, I gotta sign in my Draw and Lockbirds. That's when and they have to be like, alright, I'll sign in my Draw and Lockbirds and I'll sign in my Veiler so that I can prevent the Spellbook Magician to try to search. What you do as a Spellbook player in game 2 is you side in Dimension Fissure. Okay, so hear me out. you activate Spellbook of Judgment, okay? You're not adding cards to your hand yet, so your opponent cannot play Draw Lockbird. Now, you play Dimension Fissure. That's one spell you've played. You will get that one Spellbook card back during the end phase, so that's already pretty broken. However, since you do have Dimension Fissure, your opponent cannot play the the Drawn Lockbirds. Your opponent cannot play the Effect Veilers. So what you're about to do is you're going to go off regularly, so that even if your opponent has like 3 Veilers in his hand, or 3 Drawn Lockbirds, they can't use any of that against you. So if you're a good Prophecy player, that's actually not a good way to, like your opponent signing in Drawn Lockbirds, that's not actually a good way to beat the Prophecy player. So I was actually rethinking the usefulness of Drawn Lockbird. Maybe I'll cut it to 2, maybe I'll even cut it to like 1, maybe I'll even cut it out completely. Probably not completely. But, you know, that's also a thing to consider. And another thing I've learned about Prophecy player over here is if you're playing a rogue deck that does not have to interact with your opponent, if you're playing Chainburn, if you're playing Exodia, and you play it well, then actually you don't need to care about how much your opponent is getting advantage into his hand. So your opponent can have like 6 cards in the hand, 9 cards on the field, and then you just flip up a Secret Barrel and you burn them for all that damage. So that's also a pretty good meta call actually. If you're able to play Chainburn, you can play it successfully, then you know there is probably a way you'll get a really good matchup against Prophecies. But I've seen Prophecy players side in Royal Decree as well. So I guess the best way is what I said, Kaiku. So I hope you guys enjoyed this duel. This is Gary GZ Duels signing out.